Hi, Brigadoon campers. It's Chef Dianne here. I'm glad to be here with you today. Under different circumstances, welcome to my kitchen. I'm not at camp, I'm actually at home. And I thought that since we are all in the same boat at the moment, that we are all at home and doing our part to keep everyone safe and healthy, and to try to keep COVID-19 away from all of us, that I would do a few baking segments with you at home, and try to teach you some things that you might be able to do on your own. So the first thing that we're going to do today is I'm going to do pizza dough with you, but I'm also going to show you how you can take this pizza dough and turn it into a couple of different things. At camp we use our pizza dough obviously for pizza, but you probably didn't know that we use it in a few different ways of things that you actually enjoy at camp. So the very first thing that we're going to do, obviously my hands are clean, like everyone else's I'm sure are these days. So I've just gotten all of my ingredients together, and don't worry, this recipe will be up on the website so that you can have a look at it and get yourself all prepared so that you can follow along and go at your own pace as well. So the very first thing is you'll get everything kind of laid out and ready around you. So for the pizza dough, the very first thing you have to do is you have to get your yeast ready. So I just have a bowl here. So probably most of you at home will have something looks very similar to this, which is a package of yeast. This one is a quick rise, but you can actually let this proof just like you would any other package of yeast, but that is probably what most of you have in your cupboard at home. So if you open that up and you dump it in, it'll be the 2 teaspoons or a package of yeast that you need. So I've opened it already and it's going into my bowl. You're going to need, it says sugar. You need a tablespoon of white sugar. So you're just going to put a little bit of that in the bowl with your yeast, because yeast actually needs to be fed, and it's going to get fed off of the sugar that we're putting in here. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to add a cup of warm water. Yeast likes things to be nice and warm. They don't like things to be cold, and they don't like things to be too hot. If it's too hot, it won't let your yeast rise, and if it's too cold, your yeast won't rise either. So you want it just kind of warm enough that if you put your finger into it, it would be just a little bit warmer than what it would feel like on your finger. You should be able to feel just a little bit of warmth to it. So you're going to take about a cup of water and you're going to dump that into your yeast. And then you'll just take a spoon. Let me grab a spoon here. You'll just give that a quick little stir just to mix the sugar and the yeast and the water together. Then you'll take a piece of plastic wrap and you're going to cover this. And you want to put it in some place that is nice and warm. Not too hot again, not too cold, but someplace where it's a little bit warm. And in about 15 minutes, you'll notice that it's starting to get all bubbly, and it'll have like almost foaming on top, and that's really what you're looking for. So at this point, I'm just gonna stop. I'm gonna cover this. I'll put it aside, and I'll come back to you in about 12 or 15 minutes once this is proofed, and then we're gonna start from there, okay? Hi, Brigade family, and welcome back. Okay, so the time is up for the yeast, and I hope you can see. So this is kind of what you want it to look like. It'll be nice and foamy on top and looks very soft and lovely, and has a really nice yeasty smell coming off of it. So in a larger bowl, you're going to take and you're going to put in 2 cups of flour, and that's just all-purpose flour. And then to that you're going to add a teaspoon of salt. So dump that in. Just give it a quick little mix around so that that gets distributed a bit. And then take the yeast and you're just going to dump it straight into the bowl with the flour and the salt. Make sure you get all of it in there. And I'm going to put my gloves on because I have a little cut on my hand. And then this is the fun part. You can just start getting in there and you're going to mix everything up. You can also use a mixer at home if you have a stand mixer. So you can put a dough attachment onto it and you can start doing it that way as well. So I just take my hand and just mix it around so that it just starts coming together. So if you can see here, this is kind of what it looks like. And the flour just kind of keeps pulling away from the side. But there is one more ingredient that we're going to add, and that is going to be our olive oil, and that is 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use any type of oil that you want. So if you wanted to use sunflower oil or canola oil, coconut oil, it just gives it a different flavor. So you just dump that in on top and then go right back to mixing it again, just to get everything incorporated. So everything will start to come together. There, and it's gonna look like this, okay? So the next thing you're going to do is you're gonna take a bit of flour. Let me just grab a little bit more here. And put it down on your table or your work surface, just a little bit. And you're gonna turn that dough out onto that. And you're just gonna start to knead it. So when you knead it, kneading is just taking, let me see if I can just tilt my camera a little bit here without doing too much damage. Sorry, I'm not a videographer. I'm a chef. Okay, so hopefully you can see this a little bit. Maybe I'll pull it a little closer to me. There we go. So kneading is you're just going to take your hands and put underneath like a portion of it, and you're going to bring it up and then turn it on to like probably like the middle part of the dough. You'll turn it a little bit and then do that again. Turn it and keep doing it. And as you do it, you just want to put a little bit of pressure down onto it as you're pulling that up. So I'm using the tips of my fingers, but normally you would use the palms of your hands. So you would pull up with your fingers and then push down with your palms. And really the type of consistency that you're looking for, you'll probably have to kind of keep putting some flour underneath as well as you keep pulling that flour up and adding it to it. The type of consistency that you want is you want it to look very smooth on the outside, and I'll show you as soon as I've gotten there. You want it to be very smooth on the outside, and you want it to be very soft and pillow-like. If it's really kind of hard, your dough is going to be really tough, and although it will rise, it won't be really nice and poofy like we want it to be. So we're just going to knead it a few times here, and it may take you longer to knead than it takes me, and that's okay. Just until you get to where you need to be, and of course everyone's pressure is going to be a little bit different because everyone is a little bit stronger or less strong than somebody else. So let's just keep kneading that a little bit. Oh, it's coming together really well. Really not that complicated, and it really doesn't take that long. Really almost the longest part that it takes would be like getting yourself set up and then waiting for the dough or the yeast to rise. Other than that, it comes together quite quickly. Okay, and if you can notice, I kind of stopped putting flour underneath because once this kind of gets to where it needs to be, it won't stick anymore. So if you noticed on my table here that it has stopped really kind of sticking, and I haven't added any more flour here for a little bit. So they're really kind of there. Okay, so I'm gonna pick this up. So we're just gonna put it into a ball. You can see what it's like on the bottom, but on the top, it actually is quite smooth looking, and it's nice and, see when I push it? kind of holds all of its shape there, but it starts to bounce back a little bit. That's really what we're kind of looking for, okay? So the bowl that I had mixed it up in, we're gonna take it and we're gonna stick it right back in that bowl, and then get another piece of plastic wrap, or if you happen to have kept the piece of plastic wrap that you had covering your yeast, put it back over top of this bowl, and we're going to put this back where we had our yeast proofing, and we're going to let this sit for maybe about maybe half an hour or so. You want it to double in size, just about double in size, and that may take about a half an hour. If it takes a little bit longer, that's okay, and it may take a little bit less, depends on how warm it is in your house. So let's do that, and then I will be back and we will continue on from there. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so we're back, and our dough is beautiful. It's nice and poofy, just the way that we want it. So I'm going to show you what to do with this. So a little bit of flour down on the table. And again, I'm putting my gloves on. My hands are clean, but my little cut. So I'm putting my gloves on. We're going to spread a little bit of flour out onto the table. We'll turn our bowl upside down and our dough will come out nice and easy. And for this one, I'm going to actually take my dough and I'm going to cut it in half, because I'm going to show you two ways to do this. But you can do this two ways at home as well, or you can just choose to do it whatever way and ingredients you want. So the first one, cutting it in half. And then we're gonna pat it out a little bit. And we want it to go in a bit of a rectangle, okay? So, let's see, can you see that? Yeah, there we go. So this is a bit of a rectangle. We're gonna push it down just a little bit, maybe with our hands. Turn it over, move our flour around again, and do it. We just don't want it to stick to our surface. I'm gonna take my rolling pin, put a little bit of flour on your rolling pin just so that it doesn't stick to your dough. And then you're gonna start rolling your dough out a bit. And try to be careful when I do this, because my camera is actually attached to my work surface, so I don't want it to shake too much. Cause too much disruption. Okay, so we're gonna roll this out so it's about the same thickness as you would use for a pizza crust. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can work with what you have and whatever shape you have. Okay? So, mine is definitely not a rectangle, but there, I'm going to stretch it out a little bit so it looks a little bit more like this. Okay, so this one I am going to add, let me just grab a brush. Okay, here's my pastry brush. So on this, I'm going to take some barbecue sauce. But at this point, this is what you could add. You could add pizza sauce, you could add pesto, any type of sauce that you happen to like is what you can add at this point. So, put all the way to the edges, except for the edge that is closest to me. And that's because when we roll this up, I need an edge to stick to the outside edge. And that will be the edge that will do that. Okay, so there's some barbecue sauce. Now, the trick with this is you don't want a lot of sauce on your actual crust, because it will actually make it really hard for this to cook. The more moisture that is on this, the harder it is for the inside part of it to actually cook. So you just want a nice fine thin layer, just enough really to kind of give it a little bit of flavor. Okay, so to that, I'm going to take, and I'm gonna put some cheese down. And the other part of this too is that you can't actually put a lot of toppings inside of this, because Again, it will just take too long to cook. You'll end up cooking the outside of the dough faster than the inside, and then it will just be really kind of tough. It won't be great. You probably won't enjoy it that much. So there we go. So I have some cheese down. Now you can use whatever cheese you want. This happens to be cheddar cheese, but you could use mozzarella cheese, you could use Monterey Jack, just as long as it's really shredded cheese is probably the best result that you would get if you use shredded cheese. So I have a little bit of corn. This was just frozen corn that's defrosted and that I just drained. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this down. So mine's gonna have maybe a little bit of a Mexican feel to it, or Southwest maybe. So then I'm gonna take some black beans, and again, not a whole lot. So these are just actually black beans that I had in can. I put in the sink that I rinsed, drained, and then I rinsed. The rest of them I might use in black bean brownies. I might use on tacos, lots of different uses for this. You might want to use it on a salad. And this is another thing, you can put really whatever toppings you like, on this particular one. So I also have some jalapeno peppers. I'm going to put a few of those on. This could be as spicy as you want. You don't have to add it if you don't like them. So there. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. So then from this side, I'm going to put my fingers underneath. I'm going to lift it up like this. Pretend you're playing the piano, except upside down. And we're going to roll it onto each other. Okay, do you see this? Then pick that side up, and you're just going to continue to pick it up and kind of put it on top of each other. Press it down a little bit so that it sticks on top. Keep rolling, pressing down, not too hard, but pressing down just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of pressure. There we go. Okay, so I've reached the end where my cheese has stopped, but I still have that end that has nothing on it. I'm going to take that end and I'm pulling it up and bringing it up on top of this. Can you see how I'm doing that? I hope that's coming out on the video. So pushing it up. So now there, that's a better picture. So now you can see that edge that I had that I didn't have anything on it is enough to stick to the outside of the dough, so it holds it nice and tight there. Okay, so it should be relatively all the same size, and if it's not, if you find that you have one part that's a little bit bigger than the other, just take your hands and put your hands around it gently, and then pull it apart a little bit, towards the ends, and that will even it out so that it's pretty much the same size. Also, if it happens to be a little bit too thin, which happens a lot of time on the ends, take your hand, place it to hold it, then take your other hand and kind of push it in to make it relatively the same size as the other part. So can you see how I've done that? And then the same thing on this end. I'm going to hold it and I'm just going to push it in a little bit so that it looks pretty much like the same thickness all the way through. Okay, so I have a pan, and this pan has a little bit of olive oil in it, and I'm just going to take my hand and I'm just going to inside spread that all around so that it's nice and coated. Okay, so my pan is ready. I'll set that aside. And you can take, I have a dough cutter here, and then you're just going to take and cut it in half. You can use a knife or anything that you have. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut each half in half again. Okay, and so really you want them to be about an inch thick. Once when you're done cutting them, you want them to be all an inch thick. So each one of these I'm going to cut into a third, because that will give me about the inch that I'm looking for. You may have to cut it, again and again. But right now I'm able to cut it about in a third here, and that's what I need. There we go. So we're gonna take these, you pick each one up, and I just take it and I kind of rearrange it a little bit in my hand, and we're gonna put them inside of our pan like this. Now, don't crowd them. This pan isn't very big, so I'm only going to put 2 in across and continue until I fill my pan. And just be careful when you pick it up, because a little bit of the filling might fall out, and that's okay. But you just pick it up off of your table and set it down inside, and then you can just push it down a little bit, just a little bit of pressure, just to kind of form them and shape them. Now, this particular pan is only going to hold 8, and that's just because my pan happens to be a little bit small. But you don't even have to use a baking pan. You could use a baking sheet if you wanted to. You could even put them inside of a muffin tin if you had that. If you use like a cookie tray or a baking sheet, the only difference is that the outside of the entire bun is going to get nice and golden brown, as opposed to just the tops and the sides and the bottom in this pan. And if you're using like a muffin tin, make sure that they're actually like, that when you put them in, you just press them down a little bit, like so that they kind of take that shape. So I'm just going to move these ones over to the side, because I'm going to show you the other part of what I'll do with the rest of that dough. But to continue on with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil. So I'm just putting some olive oil on a little plate here that I had with the cheese. And I'll get a clean pastry brush. There we go. So I'm going to take some of that oil, and I'm just going to lightly brush the top of these buns. And I'm doing that because I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of seasoning on top of these, just for a little bit of extra flavor. So this happens to be a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, about a half a teaspoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of oregano, and some paprika. So the next step is we're going to let this rise again, but not as long as we let the dough rise the first time. We're only going to give this maybe about 15 minutes or so. Again, that will depend on how warm it is in your house, but I'm going to cover them with a little bit of plastic wrap. We're going to set them aside, give them about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back and I will show you what they look like. We're going to put them in the oven. We're going to let them bake. And then I'm going to show you how to finish them and what you could possibly put with them to serve them, okay? So I'll be back in about 15 minutes. Hello again. So here, we're back. So these have been proofing for about 15 minutes or so, and you can see that they've risen a little bit, that they've actually filled up the space in the dish a little bit more. So these are the peanut butter and jam, and these are the Southwest. So if you read your instructions from the very beginning, it would have said that the oven should have been preheating to 400. So it is hot right now, so I'm going to put these into the oven. We're going to leave these in probably anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Every oven will be a little bit different, but you'll want them to be nice and golden on the outside, and that if you pulled them a little bit, you'd be able to see in between that they're actually cooked. But it should take the better part of 20 minutes, okay? So the magic of video, they're going in the oven, and 20 minutes later, and I will see you then. Okay, so we are back, and this is what the Southwest one should look like this, and nice and golden. And this is what the peanut butter jam one should look like. So I'm just going to show you how you could possibly serve these. So let me get a knife and a fork so I can just get some of these out. And since we oiled or sprayed the pan, they should come out relatively easily. There we go. There's one of those. Maybe we'll put a couple on the plate. This is a great little snack, depending on the size of them. You could have them as a snack. You could put a little salad with it. You could have it as a nice little lunch. So this is the Southwest. So you could put a little bit of salsa. You could put a little bit of Southwest sauce, a little bit of sour cream, whatever it is that you would like to have with it, that's what you could serve with it. So that's that one. And this one is our peanut butter and jam. This. And just pull it apart a little bit. Here we go. That one came out quite easily. Put that aside. And this one, I would actually just take and put a little bit of like maybe powdered sugar on it. And there you go. I will show you the ones that I made yesterday. So these are mine that I made yesterday as well. These ones actually have cherry pie filling in it and a little bit of a cream cheese mixture. If you're interested in that recipe, I could put that up for you as well. But anyway, basically what I wanted to show you is that you could just take that dough, and there's so many different ways that you could use it and fillings that you could use for it. But you should just try to experiment and have a little bit of fun and think of different ways to use it instead of just pizza dough. Another thing you could do with it, if you want to make it flat like pizza dough, you could turn it into garlic cheese fingers. You could turn it into like just some sort of like flatbread that you want to have like with salad or as something to dip. But there's lots of different ways, and I would love to hear every one of them from you. So I'm sure there'll be a spot that you can send in your comments, and I would love to hear every one of them. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next one. Okay, so everyone take care, and we will see you soon. Bye.